welcome everyone. As Kay said, my name is Piotr Smetana. I'm the marketing creative director here at Superside, and I'm speaking to you from Krakow, from Poland. It's a lovely summer evening over here. I hope everyone is having a great day, and I hope you all will enjoy our session. So let's dive into it. As we all know, the only constant thing in life is change, and in order to stay competitive in today's world, you need to be prepared for changes, especially while scaling your brand. In today's session, together with my wonderful co-speaker Danielle, we'll try to give you a better idea on how to evolve your brand and from strategic perspective. But let's start with a little bit of a theory behind the rebrand and refresh, because I feel that there's a lot of misconception that it's the same thing. And that couldn't be further from the truth. So let's try to understand each one. And then together with Danielle, we'll dig a little bit deeper into how we can choose between them, or maybe not choose at all, because that's also a possibility. So while the concepts might be similar on the surface, there are actually stark differences between the two. So in the essence, a rebrand is a revolution. When we are talking about rebranding, we're metaphorically talking about tearing down the building, clearing up the pieces, and rebuilding it from the ground up. It's basically a complete change of the look and feel of your brand identity. It's also a total stop and change of the direction of the business as a whole. Therefore, it's usually paired with a completely new brand story, marketing strategy, messaging, and positioning. From a perspective of a creative director, I think that's usually more common to witness while working in a creative agency. But here's the catch. If you're working on a rebrand or refresh in-house, you're gonna live with the decisions you'll make for a while. And that doesn't happen on the agency side. So it requires a little bit of a different mindset. And in addition, if you're choosing to partner with someone else on such project, you also need to make sure that you actually choose wisely, that you will choose someone that will look beyond just cashing you out for a rebrand and then immediately moving on to the next thing.
Great points about a rebrand, Piotr. I love how you described the difference of being a revolution versus an evolution. And a brand refresh is just that. It's an evolution. It's an evolution of the business specifically. Brand refreshes help a company evolve and remain competitive in the market landscape while maintaining its core identity. A brand evolution is the time to look at how every touch point of your brand connects and ensure that every facet is intentionally considered. This is especially true in-house at a company that has scaled quickly, and thus inconsistencies start to erupt. It involves acknowledging what is currently working well for the brand and upholding that, while evolving areas of the brand that could benefit from closer alignment to your brand strategy and brand foundation. In a brand evolution, you might consider updates to your website, colors, logo, fonts, assets, and even your mission statement to closer align to where your company is today. So with those key differences between a rebrand and a refresh in mind, how do we know where to start?
Well, Danielle, I think you will agree with me that actually it all can be boiled down to asking yourself a question, why? Why would you want to do it in the first place? If you ask yourself this question, it shouldn't take you too long to realize what decision you have to make. In my opinion, a good design should always have a purpose and can be a solution to many things. So ask yourself, what are the problems I'm attempting to solve with this? What are my goals? What do I hope to achieve? Be specific and realistic to these in your answers to these questions. And remember one thing: if you're not solving only a design problem, but you're solving also a business problem. So I'm sometimes jokingly introducing myself. Hi, I'm Piotr. I'm a recovering graphic designer. Why? Because I don't want to just solve design problems, and I want to go deeper. And I think you need to look beyond just the creative side of things if you want to successfully go through a rebrand or refresh. But let's assume for a second that your business undergoes a merger or acquisition, or maybe your company needs to disassociate from a negative reputation. In such cases, losing your brand equity that you've built over the years could be actually quite beneficial. But if you're trying to solve inconsistency, if your customer profile changed, or if you're satisfied with your relationship to the market, but you feel that your image has grown stale, these are all good reasons for looking into brand refresh instead of a rebrand. So in other words, have a purpose and seek the truth. That's actually one of the principles that we have here at Superside. Make informed decisions and choices based on solving real problems, rather than just, someone saying to you that your business cards suck and you need to do a whole rebrand because of it.
Changing business cards, classic. I am a firm believer that brand consistency builds brand trust. However, it's important to think of your brand as a living, breathing thing that is maintained over time. The brand has to continuously evolve and adapt to remain relevant and maintain a strong position in the market. All right, I'm peeling back the curtain. This was Clio when it first went to market in 2008. This is the very first version of the Clio brand and the very first version of the Clio website. Piotr mentioned earlier that when looking at your brand, you're solving not only a design problem, but a business problem. If we hadn't continued to evolve the brand over the past 13 years, we would not be where we are today. Today, Clio is valued at $1.6 billion, and most recently achieved Centaur status with 100 million USD in annual recurring revenue. This is a testament to not only how our company has scaled, but how our brand continues to evolve and remain relevant. Let's talk through specifically how to navigate your brand refresh.
All right, so how do you navigate a brand refresh? Well, there are a few key elements that, in our opinion, are essential in making it successful. So first, like I mentioned before, I would start with completing a brand audit. I know it might be a scary word, but in the essence, it's time to sit down and really think about your brand weaknesses and strengths. This is the discovery portion of your brand refresh journey. It will allow you to identify and address problematic areas, but it's also your time to find what works. So don't go blindly into a refresh. Make your research, figure out what works and what doesn't, and then build on that. To give you some tangible examples, here's how we approached it actually at Superside. For me, it all started with a visual inconsistency. And consistency, in my opinion, is a key to having a successful brand, because just like Danielle said, it builds trust. So due to the hyper growth that our company went through over the past few years, we started noticing issues that happened organically. We were evolving at an extreme pace, oftentimes being very lean and sometimes scrappy, which led to a lot of inconsistency in our assets and visuals. And I think a lot of companies, go through the exactly same thing, and it's actually a great reason to go to look into when figuring out, do you want to make a brand refresh? So at the same time, we also mapped out things that we liked, like our primary color that we call Aurora Green, or other things that we felt are the soul of Superside and resonate with our audience. So we made a list of things that we need to change, and also those that we felt are good and gave us this brand equity in the first place that we can build upon and use a foundation for our refreshed look. And remember, you need to look holistically. You cannot just, look at your color palette and illustrations. You need to go beyond that.
And when you go beyond that, you have to avoid tunnel vision. As Piotr mentioned, evolving at an extreme pace can cause inconsistencies to bubble up. I've seen it as well. To scale your brand in a hyper-growth organization, it's important that you avoid tunnel vision. I cannot stress this enough. If you only focus on the brand's impact on one segment of the business, you are missing opportunities. You have to consistently position yourself to maintain a bird's eye view and understand how all the brand touchpoints work together to form that brand trust that we talked about earlier. This is especially true for how you approach the rollout of your brand evolution and the intended impact that the newly launched assets you are producing will have. So when deciding between a rebrand versus a refresh, Part of avoiding tunnel vision is the first start with your brand strategy. It can be tempting to jump right into the decision of the design elements, such as the logo, the brand colors, the fonts, the photography styles. These are the things that light us up. However, there is so much more to be considered in order to ensure you are thoughtfully building an enduring brand and an enduring business. Starting with your brand strategy will allow every decision you make regarding the look and feel of the brand to be rooted in data and avoid subjectivity. When building out your brand strategy, bring in key stakeholders to conduct interviews about the market, the customers, the prospects, and the vision for the company. We're going to talk through a few ways to approach this strategy.
Absolutely. So before jumping on this webinar, we chatted together with Danielle, and we both think that organizing a brand workshop is very important and often very overlooked way of navigating through a brand refresh. This is something that we do at Superside whenever we are working with our customers on evolving their brands, but also it's exactly the same thing that we did when we are approaching our own refresh. There are tons and tons of things that you can learn through a properly executed brand workshop. For example, what does your sales and marketing team like and dislike about your current brand? What about your designers, your customers? What is your perceived brand personality? What is your desired brand personality? What do you like when you look at your competitors? These are all things that may come up in such a workshop. But also remember, since you will be most likely involving other people, make sure to set proper expectations on who are you inviting and to what extent you are gonna use their feedback. It will help you to avoid arguments like, I specifically told you that I don't like this color, so why did you make that decision? Again, focus on trying to find the truth. And while doing so, remember to bring in different perspectives to the table, especially if you're a creative director or head of brand. I think that we as creatives, we sometimes have a tendency to become trapped in our own ivory towers, and we try to push people away from that secret creative knowledge and solving creative problems because we think that other people and teams won't be able to help effectively, or because, for God forbid, Rachel or Ted from sales will tell us that this blue color isn't blue enough. But that's a really bad approach. You want to make other people, other teams, and even your founders involved. Listen to them, especially listen to your customer-oriented teams because they're speaking to your audience all the time. Create a committee and use them as your guidance. It will also help you get a buy-in with the refresh at the early stages because people like to feel involved. And in our case at Superside, we created a group of people from different teams: creative, marketing, operations, customer success, and we involved them at different stages of the refresh. And Danielle said a great thing about avoiding tunnel vision a little bit earlier. So bringing different perspectives will help you achieve that. And it's also worth mentioning that you shouldn't just rely on different perspectives within your organization. You need to go beyond that, outside. Otherwise, you're operating in a bubble, and that can be very, 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 very dangerous. To give you one example, here at Superside, I'm surrounded by designers, like dozens and dozens of designers every day. But designers are not our customers, so taking only their input would be a mistake. And at the same time, we hire a lot of designers and creatives, so our branding has to be appealing to them, to that group as well. But I feel like it always kind of boils down to your customers. So make sure you understand your buyer personas, your target audience, and use that knowledge wisely.
Absolutely. I'm nodding like a mad woman over here. And I bet if we could see everyone else in the chat, they might be too during that part. So after we had done our research and had two directions for the brand, we were feeling confident with. We brought in our customer advisory board at Clio. And this is a focus group specific to our brand evolution. And the feedback we got was invaluable. Ultimately, we wanted our brand evolution efforts to complement the existing product and act as a foundation for our brand to continue to scale on for years to come. In the focus group, a customer described Clio as their ocean of calm. And that anecdote helped guide our decision making.
Love that, by the way.
Yeah, the ocean of calm. So I want to talk to you about engaging the founder. When leading a brand evolution, you'll want to engage the founder or CEO of the organization to ensure they are as excited about the direction as you are. Because of the brand strategy we had developed and the customer focus groups we had done, when we pitched the brand evolution to our founder and CEO, Jack, we were able to allude to these customer insights to ensure our creative decisions were rooted in insights and data. In addition to the main Clio brand, we have sub-brands, which I'll talk more about later on. But first, I wanted to share a story of how we engaged Jack for the branding of his book, The Client-Centered Law Firm. So the external agency we were working with for the book had pitched us dozens of cover options. However, none were quite landing with the excitement that we wanted. I knew Jack wanted something that was authentic and meaningful to him and embodied the passion he has for transforming the legal experience. I ultimately wanted Jack to feel connected to the cover. So knowing one of the most important things to him is his family, I approached him and said, what if his daughter, Isla, painted the cover graphic? Jack showed her some ideas, and we had asked and what she thought it should look like. And this is what she painted. So of course, we took that artwork and digitized it to be the cover of the brand of the book. And with this approach, Jack will forever feel connected to the branding of his book. We approached the Clio brand evolution the same way, by bringing Jack in early to the conversation so he had the opportunity to connect the brand decisions we were pitching. It's important to remember that while this story I was able to have of the founder being personally connected to the end result, you have to continually drive the end result with your expertise and confidence at the forefront.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that story, Danielle. I love it. I think it's really great. And you really nailed it at the end. Even if you manage to engage your founder, you need to remember that at the end of the day, you are the expert in your field. You are the person that has to differentiate, I think, from I know. To give you one example, similar to Danielle, we also encouraged our own CEO, Frederick, to provide us feedback in the middle of our refresh. And I remember my conversation with him, which basically led to him saying, Piotr, I can give you my opinion on this and that, but I'm not a creative director, so you need to look through your own lens on it. And he understood completely that he hired me for a reason. I'm doing it because he trusts me. He trusts my team, my knowledge and expertise to make strategic decisions. And what happened is that just afterwards, he messaged me and sent me a quote that he loved. You can see it on the screen right now. And that quote was related, in his opinion, to how Superside should look like or feel like. And this quote really struck a chord with me and opened my eyes. For a moment, I was able I saw a brand through the eyes of our founders, someone who was there all the way since the beginning, way before I even joined the company. And I used that. It guided some of my thoughts. Probably it's the reason why we don't want to be too literal with our branding and visual storytelling. And probably that's also the reason why you can see dogs in astronaut suits floating in space, representing a brand that provides design at scale to ambition scale-ups. But I find it quite beautiful and actually an amazing example on how you can interact with your founders, get their input in whatever form they prefer, and get something valuable out of it while driving the result with your expertise. But in order to do so, you also need to stay organized. That's right. I think people really underestimate the value that comes from properly planning and organizing your work, especially when it comes to such big initiatives. For example, when I joined Superside initially, we were already ramping up our marketing efforts. The demand for creative was already through the roof. New teams were forming every month. So at first, the idea of doing a refresh in the middle of a storm kind of freaked me out. But then we realized, hey, we don't have to do everything all at once. Actually, in our case, the only way of successfully running a brand refresh was to do it in a couple of phases. So we started small. we started tackling some of the key areas we knew were problematic, and we went from there. The phased and organized approach also gave us a possibility to kind of test the waters, so to speak. So, for example, when we first started rolling out the new look on the YouTube channel and our social media, we knew that that's where our audience sits. And it was a win-win situation because we were able to work and progress on a refresh while getting feedback at the same time.
Awesome, Piotr. And I saw in the chat too, Melissa was mentioning that they've been looking at phases within their company too. So hopefully this is really good takeaways for the group. I love Piotr mentioned that the only way of successfully running a brand refresh was to do it in a couple of phases specifically. At Clio, there was a ton of excitement for the brand evolution, and we broke the rollout into 3 phases. So following our brand strategy and successfully locking our creative direction for the brand evolution, the first phase in the execution was our foundations phase. This included brand guidelines, templates, training, and enrollment. This was the phase that would ultimately inform all the decisions we would make going forward. The second phase we deemed an asset overhaul, where we created a tiering structure for all assets across function within Clio. We prioritized the highest traffic externally facing assets, taking the entire marketing funnel into consideration. We closely followed this with internal facing channels to ensure employee buy-in to the brand. In our final stage, we looked at brand extensions, which are supporting brands within the organization that complement the main brand, such as our annual conference, our annual report, and so on. These 3 phases were crucial in scaling any brand. While it may move fast, make sure that every decision you make throughout these phases is rooted in your research and data.
Wow, I couldn't agree more. Data is your best friend every step of the way. So yeah, look into for insights in your growth and performance marketing teams. Ask them which ads and landing pages are resonating with people, which ones are the ones that are converting at higher rates, what comments people leave under the ad creative that you produce. But also remember that brands can be very subjective, and you need much more than just data to create a consistent and trustworthy brand. It's all about the balance. So pair up your data with your experience and expertise.
So when building the brand strategy for Clio, we looked to gain a deeper understanding of our target audience through valuable insights. One area we looked at in particular was actually meme accounts for attorneys across Instagram. The comments across these channels were invaluable to us understanding the emotional insights of customers. If you haven't checked out attorney problems yet, now's the time. We were able to uncover trends in thought and opinion, which helped shape not only the overarching brand, but future campaigns as well. So let's look at a few specific examples.
All right, so I guess say hi to Astropop. He's a pretty good boy. Okay, quite a while ago, before we've done a brand refresh, one of our ads went quite viral. It was featured in different articles, newsletters, and to this day, it's actually one of the top performing ads in our roster. And it features this lovely dog floating in space that I mentioned before, with a clever use of a design resembling Facebook UI. And yeah, of course, as we were progressing with our brand refresh, we had to ask ourselves, what do we do with a Astropop? And we realized that it became such an iconic part of our design verse, our visual language, that we decided to keep it. And as you can see, our illustration style evolved since then, but we are still using Astropop because, data show that it works. It's engaging. People comment on it. And we have a measurable proof that it's something that we should keep. So make sure to use your data you've got and make informed decisions based on it.
For the record, if Astropop was a real dog, I would be on the floor, petting him, cuddling him. I love that ad. Another example is Clio's first ever 360 brand campaign that we recently launched. This was Clio's biggest opportunity to emotionally connect with lawyers across the globe, an audience that solves society's arduous problems, and often under the most emotionally and mentally challenging circumstances. The driving insight for the campaign was being a lawyer is harder than it needs to be. We brought this concept to life by having an entire legal team treading water while having a seemingly normal day in the office and playing out all of the understated humor that comes with carrying out tasks in that environment. So with the work we had done on the strategy of the brand and the data that informed it, the response we have been getting has been incredible. A few comments to highlight. So Cleo, I'm picking up what you're putting down. This accuracy of how it feels is spot on. And you guys hit the nail right on the head. So after using data to inform our decisions, how do you measure the impact of your creative once it's in the market? And there's two ways that we can measure that impact specifically. So first, we'll look at measuring brand awareness, followed by A/B testing. So think about this. When legal software is Googled, there are 7.3 billion results. 7.3 billion. How is your prospect supposed to know which of those 7.3 billion links to click on? Well, familiarity has the strongest influence on which of those 7.3 billion search results will be clicked. So when we focus on brand consistency and building brand trust over time, we build that familiarity. Familiarity with our brand means our brand is synonymous with the category. Instead of typing in legal software, we see those in the mainstream market type in CLIO, Clio, and we measure this as branded search. So let's also look at another way in a more granular detail.
Absolutely. Yeah. As Danielle mentioned, there are multiple ways of measuring the impact of your refresh. And in our case at Superside, we run an A/B test of our highest converting landing page that actually receives the majority of our traffic. So what we did, we basically stripped it down from the old branding and we recreated it with pretty much the same copy, but with a completely new refreshed look. And with new branding, we saw almost 90% increase in conversion, which validated our hypothesis. The new brand works. And with that knowledge, we were able to run more experiments using new branding as the foundation. So remember, it's a process. So develop your hypothesis, validate your decisions, and move forward one step at a time.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about brand evolution being something that is required as your organization scales and you look to maintain relevancy and consistency. So as your organization scales, it is crucial that you have the right systems in place to support the brand remaining consistent. As I've mentioned, I've always believed that brand consistency at every touch point builds brand trust. I'm going to keep saying it. And allows a long-term strategy or vision to be successful. All right, show of hands in the chat. How many times have you been asked, can you send me the logo this week? Give me a number. I'm watching the chat. How many times have you been asked that? How many times a week do you get asked to resize an asset? Take each repetitive request to pause and think about how you can create efficiencies for your organization to scale, allowing you the space to think strategically and creatively instead of being reactive. Challenge your thinking and ask yourself, what can you automate in your current workflows? How will your current workflows scale to maintain the company scaling? How will your current workflows support a company twice the size, 5 times the size, or 10 times the size? How will the brand successfully scale if design can't meet the inherent demand for the growth? It's important to remember that inefficiencies compound over time. So you can only imagine that simple example of a logo request. Imagine if your company is 10 times the size and you get asked that 10 times the amount of times. So Marie, imagine 3 times this week you've been asked, how many times can I have the logo? At 10 times the size, that would be 30 times by Wednesday that you've been asked, can you send me the logo? Crazy, crazy. In a hyper-growth company where projects and tasks continue to move fast, these inefficiencies compound at a ridiculous rate. You have to forecast what the inherent need of those interacting with your brand will be in the future. and recognize obstacles and opportunities to allow for that scale to take place. So one of the best ways to scale a hyper brand in hyper growth mode is to think about where the efficiencies are. This quote resonates with me. Civilization advances by extending the number of operations we can perform without thinking about them. This is an important piece to remember when you look at your processes and operations within your organization that support the scale of the brand. You can't allow for repetitive requests without shifting processes to support the demand. Over time, those repetitive requests take away from the creative team's ability and time to think strategically and remain competitive with the brand. So when I first joined Clio, the brand looked something like this to me. Anyone else's brands look like this right now? The search functionality and access overall was limited to knowing the name of the file or folder where the asset was stored. Ultimately, oversight into the brand was limited. And you can only imagine, again, with that company scaling, when you bring on someone new into the brand, how do they get the context of where the brand live and exists today? I recognized immediately that this system wouldn't allow for the scale of the brand nor the scale of the business. So we went from this to this. So by implementing a digital asset management system, better known as a DAM, we have enabled each and every employee to engage with the brand when and how they need to. So think of the DAM as the Amazon-esque of search and findability. You can find assets by filtering through the taxonomy and finding exactly what you need, when you need it. Discoverability is also huge from this perspective, as they can explore the DAM at any given time to see how they can leverage assets that have been created. This is especially true for different markets that we launch into. Within the DAM in place, it allowed us to organize all of the assets we had uploaded and really get a sense of the brand as a whole. We were able to see a bird's eye view of every touch point and a prospect or customer comes across with our brand and how the assets related to one another. So since launching in summer 2020, the DAM is home to 14,500 assets. And yes, it solves the "can you send me the logo" problem. These brand guidelines exist to allow everyone, both internally and externally, to access brand elements effortlessly. We've not only enabled the entire company to access branded assets, but also to create net new ones that meet the demand via digital brand templates. In this digital template, for example, our growth team can experiment with copy while maintaining the brand and allowing for velocity in the creation of the assets. I like to think of this as the design team going from 11 people to 800 people. So since launching in the summer of 2020, there have been 30,072 keyword searches. I see this as 30,072 Slack messages that never happened. People were enabled to find the assets they needed independently, allowing the creative team to stay focused on their design work and for the org to continue to discover and explore branded assets that allow us to continue scaling. The logo is not surprisingly the most viewed asset and most searched for. So a takeaway here is that I know changing the way you store assets can feel overwhelming and exciting at the same time. The key thing to remember for whenever you are with asset management is that it doesn't have to be difficult. It just has to be intentional. Even if you're not working with a DAM specifically yet, it is about how you meet the continued demand and the business impact that your speed to market has. It's about continuously evolving your processes as you scale.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, that's exactly right. And even if you're not working with a DAM yet, there are other ways on how you can scale during your refresh. Let's be honest. Everything revolves around speed, from accessing all the creative designs in the DAM to updating all assets with the new branding. There is no good in doing a rebrand or refresh if you can't produce and distribute assets to your teams at scale as you go. And during our own refresh, it didn't take too long for me to realize that we need some help. Design isn't just the homepage. It's every touch point that forms a cohesive idea of our brand both for customers and supersiders alike. And all those assets used by dozens of teams needed their own evolution. And even though we've done the hard creative work in developing the new look and the style of everything, from like slide decks and email graphics and blog headers and more, there was way more work ahead of us. Well, and that's exactly where we, as a marketing creative team at Superside, became a customer of Superside. So we bought into the same idea that we promised our own customers. We paired up with a dedicated team led actually by Kay, our lovely host today. Hi, Kay. And yeah, we use Superside to take care of the most time-consuming, production-oriented design work. For example, so much of what we do here at Superside is in Google Slides, sales decks, onboarding decks, training decks. Getting them all updated using only our own internal resources would be extremely time-consuming, and it wouldn't allow us to spend more time on more strategic elements, especially when, as I mentioned before, even if you are doing a refresh, the show must go on. Like, the market doesn't sleep. You can just pause your operations and ask people to hold off on design requests until you update every last asset. And in this case, Superside was actually essential for us to move with speed at scale. So here's our framework for updating thousands of assets in our brand refresh. So first, our internal creative team created a final standardized version of the core branding. Think of them like functional templates for some of the ongoing assets needs, like social media graphics, email headers, slide decks, all that stuff. Then we let our Superside team take care of updating all the old existing assets using what we did internally as a reference, like a brand refresh at scale. And it was incredible. Like, it really empowered us. Each time we closed an exploration on one asset in need of a refresh, it allowed us to immediately move on to the next thing. It enabled us to put our focus into strategic planning and vision. And to become even more efficient, we asked Superside to create Figma templates for some of the most repeatable assets that often only required a copy change, like Instagram graphics. We empowered and could trust our social media manager to quickly create on-brand assets on her own without any quote-unquote delays from the creative team. In fact, as a marketing creative team, without those never-ending interruptions for, as you say, logo requests, we could make more progress with refreshing other assets and brand extensions like Gather and Grow, and that's slide deck that you are seeing right now. And I think people are starting to see the power of great design and how and the time that it takes to create all those wonderful assets. I want to believe that the days of design teams bringing a production house over are gone, and we need a seat at the strategy table. The best design, in my opinion, goes beyond just logos and brand colors. Great design comes from design teams, and design teams need to be set up for success, not lost in the monotony of day-to-day production work. So in our case, design operation was making us way more efficient and helping us achieve far more than we thought was possible. So if you can afford it, use a DAM, explore your tool stack, use Figma to help with your brand refresh. I don't know, use Asana for task management, and find a design partner who can take the weight off your shoulders, and so you can concentrate on the designs that impact the bottom line.
So great, Piotr. I'm laughing at the cough. In summary, we want to leave you with one last thought. I believe people have an inherent desire to be on brand. Throughout time and throughout every culture, people have followed styles, traditions, and ways of life. Piotr chose to wear a black shirt today. I chose to wear a dress with a necktie. These are all styles that we follow. But style evolves over time. My hair is not perm today. It's down and straight. When looking at your organization's brand, that means using the right content in the right context, at the right time, across the right channel. Those that interact with your brand and have any part in building it have a desire to source the best content possible. And I believe if you put that content in front of them in an intentional way, that not only will it use most effectively, but have a huge part in scaling the brand and the business with velocity. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, everyone.